Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Welcome back to Hausfrau Friday. This is a regular weekly segment where I talk about the interplay between domestic issues, familial issues, and sustainable living. Today, I want to perhaps make two videos. It is late in the day, and I've had a very, very busy day, and this video is going to be late coming out, so I think I might do a two-fer for you guys. I have a couple of different things I want to talk about. So I'm obviously not at my house. I'm at my dad's house taking care of some paperwork and things I need to do here. And I wanted to talk today about a subject that has been on my mind quite a bit since my mom passed away about 2 years ago. And it's something that comes up a lot for me over these last few weeks. And I hope that my thoughts on it and talking about honestly where I am is helpful for you all. And maybe you all can help me in return with some encouragement and advice. I wanted to briefly dive in a little bit today about whether we own our possessions or they own us, and what is a healthy relationship with material objects in our home when we are a homemaker, and particularly one that is interested in earth care, people care, and fair share. So I'm sitting in the kitchen, as you can tell by the fact that it's kind of echoey in here, lots of hard surfaces. The piece of furniture behind me is a china hutch that my parents bought when I was young and we lived in Germany, and I've always been very attached to it. There's a number of things here in this house that I'm quite attached to, and I have grown up with them my whole life. They aren't necessarily family pieces because my mom basically got all of them at thrift shops in Germany. They are thrifted pieces that some other family gave up. Some other family said, we no longer need this. They're all really imperfect. They're not worth very much. They have an aesthetic that I find incredibly appealing. I have very much a grandma chic way of decorating. And as we are now in the process of deciding which pieces of furniture go to which siblings, it dredges up all kinds of emotional difficulties, both within ourselves as individual siblings and in the interplay between siblings. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we, as people who are really invested in sustainable living, we meaning you and me, not necessarily me and my siblings, you and me, how we view our relationship with material objects. It's very difficult when you have something that you have an emotional attachment to, particularly if it's tied very strongly to fond memories that you have. It can be really difficult to let go of something. When we have emotional attachment to an inanimate object, a material object, we can put a tremendous amount of meaning into it because that china hutch is loaded with memories. It is the conduit through which we recall all kinds of memories. Touch memories, olfactory memories. When you open that cabinet up, it smells like old wood in a way that reminds me of opening it up at the holidays when my mom would let me get out the fancy crystal and help set the table. And so there's so many fond memories tied up in material objects for so many of us, right? And so it's far more than this inexpensive piece of thrifted furniture. It is a connection to my childhood and a connection to people that are no longer with me. And in that way, we can imbue these objects, which may not be monetarily worth much of anything, with a tremendous amount of value. And that can make it very hard to let go of them when we need to. I've been doing a lot of thinking as there's been some kind of a little bit of squabbling about who gets what piece of furniture. I've been thinking a lot about the time and emotional energy that we put into material objects and whether they give back. And I don't mean necessities that help us, put food on the table or help us, get our basic needs met. I mean those aesthetic objects that we place value upon, that we have a hard time letting go of. Sometimes the more that we have, the more we want to hold on to it. And the more that we value a certain segment of our possessions, the more we can find it harder to let go of anything. And I'm not just, spitballing here. I've seen that in family members. A fair amount. And as we've been going through objects and I've been deciding what goes to charity, what could we give to a friend, what would be best distributed amongst the grandchildren, I've thought a lot about what my mother went through cleaning out her mother's two houses that were stuffed to the gills when my grandmother passed away. months and months and months that my mom spent wading through all of these material possessions. Time in her life that she took away from her grandkids, from her own house, from her children, to go and sift through all of these objects that my grandma could not take with her. And how she brought many of them back with her to her house. And now I'm going through them. And so many of them are in boxes, taped up. My mom brought them here and never reopened them, never looked at them again. I've been thinking about the amount of life hours. I've talked a lot about the book, Your Money or Your Life, which has helped me reframe a lot of things in terms of life hours. How many life hours my mother spent going through my grandmother's material possessions that were a burden to my grandmother when she was alive, or a burden to my grandfather. And now I am spending many hours of my life sorting through all of that stuff. Things that were family heirlooms, or even family letters, or objects that my grandma got at the thrift store or some farm sale, have no familial attachment whatsoever, no familial connection. And yet I am spending time sifting through it once again, after my grandma sifted through it, and my mom. Now I am doing it. All of these life hours we are giving up for material possessions. And it just makes me think, like, what is the level of attachment that we want to have as people who are pursuing a sustainable way of living? Is it sustainable to have a volume of objects that we give our time to instead of giving our time to people? So as I'm sorting through all of these things in my parents' house, I'm thinking about the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. I'm thinking about the conflict that arises when we can't decide who gets what piece of furniture, when we can't decide what pieces go to the thrift store and what pieces get distributed amongst family. I'm thinking about what it does to us when our possessions own us and we don't own them, when we are serving them and they are not serving us. So a lot of the things out of this house we have been giving to the thrift store. Many, many loads of things to the thrift store. And that feels really good to me. And sometimes it can feel really hard at the same time. When I look at something and I say, my mom cherished this and loved this, but I don't have a use for it. Should I take it home to honor her memory, to remind me of her, knowing I will probably never use it? The reality is, the way I honor my mother is I pass that thing along to somebody that can use it. In earth care, it is always better for the environment to suspend the production of new goods. If we can take something existing and gift it to somebody else, share it with somebody else so that they can use it rather than having it sitting, gathering dust in a cupboard, we are doing better by the planet. And I also think I'm doing better by my mother's memory. If there are things that I know meant a lot to her, but I can't use them, why not pass them along to somebody else where someone else will get to use them as much as my mom did? If we look at the people care, it's the same thing. There are objects I've gotten off of Buy Nothing or at the thrift store that I value and I use every day and have made my life easier, and my quality of life has improved because I've had access to this thing. And some folks will say, like, you don't value something as much if you get it for free or you get it at the thrift store. That is complete bull. If you can't afford an object, but you find it at the thrift store for a few dollars, or somebody offers it on Buy Nothing, you will cherish it all the more because you know you cannot afford to replace it. And you know that the opportunity will probably never come again to get it at that price point. When I think about people care, I think about how most of the furniture in this house, my mom got at thrift stores in Europe when we lived there. Somebody else gave it up so that a different family could have the opportunity to own and use it. That has been tremendously helpful for me in thinking about getting rid of things that I know that my mom valued, or things that are beautiful and aesthetic that I just cannot use and that my kids can't use. It is blessing somebody else by getting it out of my household and out into the world where somebody else who really needs it can find it. And if we're looking at the permaculture ethic of fair share, we're looking at folks who don't have enough of something. Let me give you an example. I And I don't mean just like enough of necessities. There's so much in American culture that is thinking that people on food stamps like shouldn't have cell phones and they shouldn't eat tasty food. They should be eating like government processed cheese and like canned plums or something. I don't know. But that like if you're poor, you don't have a right to nice things. We were poor for many years. The first 10 years I ran Parkrose Permaculture, we technically could have gotten food stamps. We were poor. And I got so many beautiful, lovely things at the thrift store. Teacups for my children. We would have a weekly tea party when they were little. Beautiful little dishes that I could get for 25 or 50 cents. Old linen napkins that we could use. And that just brought like a level of fanciness to our household. That just felt like we're really poor and we're not going to spend beyond our means. But that doesn't mean that we can't acquire nice things. Looking at the fact that my mom has 6 sets of really nice china dishes. Nobody needs 6 sets of dishes. Again, my mom entertained a lot, but a lot of the time, for example, there was a set that she got that was just for me. I'll insert a picture here. It was just for me. She bought it. It's the spring set. We used it twice a year, my birthday in March and on Easter. And that was it. Didn't get used any other time. And I think about how I'm going to take one of these sets of dishes and the other 5 can go and bless some other family. When we think about fair share, it doesn't mean that we are all being deprived of everything and that we're having our hard-earned things taken away from us. It also doesn't mean that people who are poor get the scrapings, get the leftovers. It means there's an opportunity for everybody to have beauty and abundance if we do it right, if we have community care in mind. So those are just some of my thoughts as I'm here sorting through things at the house. Thinking about what can I let go of, what can I detach from, what can I grieve this object and the memories attached to it, and what can I put out into the world for someone else to use so that I can have earth care by preventing somebody from needing to have something manufactured new. How can I practice people care by letting somebody who couldn't otherwise afford that item to find a treasure for themselves that they could really utilize? And how can I practice fair share by saying, do I really need, 12 cameos that my grandma got? Or do I need just one and I can share the others? I hope those of you that are homemakers can take the opportunity to look at possessions. Those of you that are at that same, sandwich generation that I'm in can look at things that you're sifting through from your parents or your grandparents and say, what of this do I really need? What will bless my home, bless my family, and what can go on to bless somebody else so that it doesn't become a burden for me and a deprivation for somebody else? Thank you for watching today. I will be back very soon from outdoors in my permaculture garden. I have some updates from the November garden, and I'll be back really, really soon. Thanks.